There we go. So yeah, last week's class, we were mainly talking about how to look at a chord or looking at the given harmony and go, cool, what else can I do with this? What other options do I have to play these chords, right? And we kind of did that whole deep dive. This week, I want to focus on the other side of reharmonization, which is embellishing and adding tension to an already existing harmony. And this is a really powerful tool for like songwriting, for taking like a stagnant chord progression that you might have that you're feeling like, I would love to finish writing the song, but it's not feeling like it's feeling stagnant, right? And it's another thing that I do with these techniques, which we're going to be looking at secondary dominant chords and 2-5-1s, and then some extraneous things to do with those two things. They just add so much to your kind of like toolbox, for lack of a better word. So just show of hands, has anyone worked with 2-5-1s or secondary dominants before? Yes or no? Yes? Okay, awesome. Is everyone comfortable with them? Or like a little shaky? We're cool with like major, minor, etc. Okay. And then in terms of kind of the last thing we'll go over, I just want to get like a good temperature for the class. We're going to go over all this in depth, but has anyone looked at tritone substitution before, or is that? Yep, sweet. Okay. Sounds scary, but super, super easy. So I wanted to kind of start the class by talking about secondary dominant chords. That sheet that I attached in the module is really just like a summary sheet of what we're going to go over today. So when we talk about secondary dominant chords, you've heard these a million times before, but in order to really understand what a secondary dominant chord is, we first have to really get a firm grasp of what our primary dominant chord is, right? And all I mean by primary dominant is, the dominant chord that exists naturally within the major scale, right? If we're thinking diatonic harmony, if I'm in the key of C, my diatonic chords, right? C, D minor, E minor, or F major 7, G dominant 7, A minor, B half diminished, C, right? So that 5 chord, G7 in the key of C, or any key you're in, it's always the 5 chord, which is the dominant chord, right? That will naturally occur when you stack thirds on top of each other from the major scale. So that is what we call our primary dominant chord. And we want to look at the relationship of the primary dominant chord to the target chord, right? So we always say, okay, G7 resolves to C, right? And we hear it all the time, right? That sound 5-1 tells us a lot about harmony. It's saying every time we have a dominant chord, that dominant chord wants to resolve down a fifth to C, right? And we hear that in classical music every second. We hear, right? Can't do it that fast, but it's a very, very powerful sound. It's no different than if I were to play, right? You want to hear that resolution, and that's the whole kind of idea around dominant chords. So if you're unfamiliar with dominant chords, just think of them as that thing that is going to create tension and then resolve. No different than when you hear that and you want to hear that resolution. That's that same thing with the 5 chord or the dominant chord. So what we want to do is we want to take this concept, right? We want to say, okay, cool. When I want to go to a C chord in the key of C, if I play a dominant chord 5 notes away, I'm targeting C and I'm going to go C, D, E, F, G, 5 notes away. Great. There is my really important kind of rule and regulation to think about. So now we could go ahead and we could say, okay, well, that's a cool idea, but what if I want to make another diatonic chord sound special and exciting, right? For example, let's say, cool, I want to go back to C. I can do that with my primary dominant chord, but what happens if I'm playing C to A minor, right? That would be my 1 chord to my 6 chord. And I say, well, God, I wish I could make that A minor sound more resolved and more exciting, because this sounds good, but sounds pretty relaxed, right? There's not a whole lot of tension bringing me to that A minor. So I could say, okay, well, let me think of that relationship. We said when we wanted to target C, we played a dominant chord a fifth away, right? Or 5 notes up. So I'm going to use that same logic now. I'm going to say, okay, I'm targeting A minor. So let me count 5 notes up from A minor and play a dominant chord with that. So does anyone know what note that would be if we're thinking of A minor? See a couple of you playing it already, right? It would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would be E7, exactly, right? So check us out. And we've heard this a million times. It's so many songs, right? This would be... right? So already it's like, great, we have all this extra tension bringing us to this A minor chord. And that chord, E7, does not exist in the key of C major, correct? And that is one of the primary identifications, or primary characteristics rather, of a secondary dominant chord. It is a non-diatonic chord. It does not exist within the key that we are working in. The nice thing about secondary dominant chords is you can target pretty much any diatonic chord you want. So I said C to A minor. Let's say we're going, do a different one. We'll do C to F, right? Say, cool, I'm gonna work that same process. My target is F. So now I'm gonna think, what's 5 notes away from F? That'll give me my secondary dominant chord, F, G, A, B, C. Interesting, C, so I'm gonna play a C dominant chord here, right, which brings me to that F. And some people get confused with this one when we're going to the 4 chord using a secondary dominant, because they're like, well, wait a minute, we were playing C major 7, and now I'm gonna go C dominant 7 to F, right? It can sound a little confusing in the head, but as long as we're just thinking about it as I'm going from C to F, and I'm targeting that F, with a dominant chord a fifth away, F, G, A, B, C. It's gonna be C7. And you've also heard this 100 times too. You'll hear, right? We always hear that like, I see a hand. What's going on?
Yeah, so what you just did there was making it the F major and then minor, right?
Yeah, well, I didn't play that actually. I just did C triad, C major 7, sorry, C dominant 7 to F major. And then you could do the classic, you know, F minor to G, back to C. That's that classic. That's like so many Beatles songs, right? Yeah, beautiful sound. So is that making sense to everyone from like a theoretical standpoint? Any questions? See, we got Christian. What's up? I think you're muted. Sorry, can't hear you. I think you just have to unmute. There we go.
So when you're going to the secondary dominant, what chords are fair game when you're doing the secondary dominant? Like so far we got F and then A for the key of C.
Yep. Yeah, so you could use secondary dominant going to any diatonic chord you want. The only one that won't really sound great is going to the 7 chord, right? If I wanted to do a secondary dominant going to the 7 chord in the key of C, so the 7 chord is B minor 7 flat 5. So if I were to play an F sharp 7, I mean, you totally could, but since that's I generally recommend only doing secondary dominants going to a major or a minor chord.
Okay.
Yeah, but another common question kind of stemming off of what you're saying is like, well, what if I'm just working with 5, G7, my normal 5 chord to 1, right? Could I do one going to G? Absolutely, and that happens all the time. So I could actually go, well, my normal turnaround is just G to C, 5 to 1, but I'm going to say, let me make this a little bit more dramatic. I'm going to really bring that tension to the G7 and then resolve it to C. So I could say, here's my 5 chord. What's the 5 of G? G, A, B, C, D is a 5th away. So now I could play D7 to G7.
Yeah.
Right?
That's good.
And that gives you a much like a delayed resolution, you know?
Yeah, that's good.
Right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, you can do it to absolutely any chord. If I was just going 1 to 2, I could do D minor as my 2 chord. So all I think is what's 5 notes up from D minor? D, A, B, C. Oh, sorry. D, E, F, G, A. Oh my goodness. So I have A7 going to D. So now I have, with a secondary dominant, I have,
Yes.
right? Could do the same thing going to E minor. I say what's a 5th up from E minor is B. So now I could have,
Yeah.
going
That's
to
good.
F, right? Just it would be C7. Same thing to G. And you'll see like that once you get that visual, once you get that whole idea in your head, it becomes incredibly visual. Like if I have any chord that I'm targeting in the key of C, and I know that it's going to be a 5th away as my secondary dominant, you know, if I'm playing D minor on the A string, I know I just got to hop over to the low E string. There's my secondary dominant, right? It's like you can instantly print every single secondary dominant in any key by doing that. Or vice versa. If I was on, you know, the low E string, I know I just find my 5th and then, right? Right? Etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's
All
very like Randy Newman-esque.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's once you start working with these, you'll listen to like all the songs you used to listen to and be like, that is so clearly just a secondary dominant chord, you know? So yeah, super fun stuff.
Awesome.
And what I wanted to show you guys real quick, let me just, I'm trying to screen mirror my iPad again, but I figured out a better way to do it. So let's see. All right, I just got to share my screen. Okay, share, and then do this. Let me see. Can everyone see my iPad now? Can I get a verbal yes? Sorry, I can't actually see you guys.
Yep, we got it.
Yeah, we got it.
All right, yeah. Beautiful. Sorry about that. So, what we're talking about here, also, I've never done this camera thing before, so if everything is coming out backwards, just let me know. Just unmute yourself and let me know. So we just kind of talked through secondary dominants. I just wanted to show you how we would actually analyze those with Roman numerals, just because that's important, especially when we're looking at a new chord progression. It's just a good idea to know how to kind of look and analyze through a chord progression. So, whoopsie, oh gosh. So first thing we had was we did C, and we said we're going to A minor, right? So we'll do, you know, C major 7, and then let's say our next bar has A minor 7 in it. And we said to target this, we're going to put an E7. So we have an E dominant 7. Now, if I want to analyze this, right, I know C major is my 1 chord. So I could have 1 or 1 major 7. We don't know what we're going to call E7 yet, but we do know A minor 7 is just our 6 minor 7 chord, right? So we have 1 major 7, 6 minor 7. These are just our diatonic chords. Now, what do we call this E7, right? It's kind of like... normally when we think of analyzing this, I say, okay, well, E is the 3 chord of C, and it should be a minor chord, but it's dominant. So I can't call that the 3 major, because that's not how that chord is functioning. So whenever we analyze a chord progression, we always analyze based on function. Okay, so this E7 isn't functioning as a 3 chord because it's not diatonic. So we can't call it the 3 chord. But we do know it is the 5 of A minor. right? So check us out. I say, okay, E7 is the 5 of A minor, and A minor happens to be my 6th chord. So I could write this out. I would say this is 5 of 6. And then that is just resolving to 6. That's just a little arrow showing us that. Now I could do that same thing. Let's do one more example. Let's do, C major 7 to F major 7. We said that we also find our secondary dominant. We just go up a 5th from F, which is C dominant 7, right? So here I analyze, I have 1 major 7, F is my 4 major 7. Again, we're going to do the same process to kind of analyze what this is. And if we look, we say, okay, well, again, C is normally my 1 chord, but we already have our 1 major 7 here, right? So it's not functioning now as a 1 chord. It's functioning as something else. It's actually functioning as the 5 of F, right? And F happens to be our 4 chord. So I'm going to say this is the 5 of 4. And that is just resolving down to 4. Does this make sense? Does anyone have any questions? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, cool. So, did that make sense? Just how to kind of start analyzing things? Yeah, okay. And this just helps if you're going through like a new song, or if you're writing a song and you're just trying to look at it from an analytical standpoint and see what's really going on. Helps a lot. So, any questions on secondary dominance before we move on? Or is everyone feeling good on those? Feeling good? Beautiful. So to take it a step further with secondary dominance, let's just think again, let's just think diatonically for a second, right? We want to target C major, right? We said, okay, I can always go a 5th away, play a dominant chord. And this is diatonic, so this is just my 5 chord to my 1 chord. Now, anytime you have a dominant chord resolving, you can always play what's called the related 2. And all that means is we look at our target chord, right? And I say, okay, C, what is the 2 chord of my target chord, right? Same process. I said, what is the 5 chord of whatever chord we're targeting, right? And this happens to be D minor 7, right? G7, C major 7. So this is just what we call a 2-5-1, right? And this happens to be a diatonic 2-5-1. This is just my 2 chord in the key of C, 5 chord in the key of C, and 1 chord in the key of C. Now, if you have that sheet handy that I had sent, you'll see we have 2 different types of 2-5-1s. We have a major 2-5-1, and we have a minor 2-5-1. The only difference is when we go to a major 2-5-1, we resolve to a major chord. When we go to a minor 2-5-1, we resolve to a minor chord. And also you'll find a difference in what chord quality the 2 chord is. When we resolve to a major chord, we're going to be resolving, when we resolve to a major chord, the 2 will be just normal minor 7. And when we're resolving to a minor chord, we're going to resolve to a, we're going to play a minor 7 flat 5 is the 2 chord. So that's what we're looking at right here. So it says going to a major 2-5-1, the 2 chord is minor 7. Going to a minor chord in a 2-5-1, the 2 is going to be minor 7 flat 5. Now the reason being is right here we can actually see we have D minor 7, D, F, A, C, G7 going to C. If we look at, right, the whole point of this 2-5-1 is really just to accentuate the 5 chord, right? We already said like our secondary dominance, happens to be our primary dominant, but the same rules apply. That's the main sound we're after, is that tension going to resolution. And that tension comes from our dominant chord, right? Now what the 2 chord does, adding the 2 chord into the mix, basically just signals to the listener, hey, we're going to be experiencing some turbulence in a second. Like it's like the seatbelt sign coming on the airplane, right? And if we think what is actually happening when we play D minor 7, if we think of it in terms of like, okay, we should just be playing G7 this entire bar. we look at it, the chord tones in D minor 7 here, right? We have, if we're analyzing this as if it were actually a G7 chord, right? We have a lot of our chord tones here. We have G, B, D would be the 5th, F would be the flat 7. So we already have the 5th and the flat 7th of G7. And now we have A, which is the 9th, right? Be a natural 9. And we also have C, which would be a sus4 or an 11. So basically, all that the 2 does is it kind of just makes it sound like you're going. It gives you the illusion kind of doing like a G sus chord to a G dominant, boom, and then resolving, right? And that is a sound we're all really familiar with when you hear, right? A lot of people don't really think of what is actually going on in a 2-5-1. They'll just be like, you can play the 2 and go to the 5 and go to the 1. That's it. But if you really wanted to analyze everything that's going on, this is kind of the nitty gritty. Now, same thing here. We're going to C minor 7 instead of C major. So when we have a minor 2-5-1, the 2 chord has to be minor 7 flat 5. The reason being is because that A here in D minor 7 flat 5 is going to be the flat 9, which is a tendency tone resolving us to our C minor. Now, if we had the natural 9, if we just did normal D minor 7, it would really set your ear up for the expectation to hear a major chord coming out of that. So check us out. If you hear, right? Sounds completely wrong, right? It's like, what the heck was that? D minor 7, G7 to C minor 7. Not as fitting as, check us out, when I play D minor 7 flat 5. You see how much more, it's like, wow, that really fits, that minor sound really fits us there. So that idea, minor 7 flat 5, dominant to minor, is always going to be what we're doing when we're going to a minor chord. And then just when we're going to a major chord, we just have normal D minor 7, G7 to C major 7. So those are just the 2 different types of 2-5-1s that you'll encounter. Does anyone have any questions on how to generate a 2-5-1? Making sense? Okay, sweet. So with 2-5-1s, we can do the same exact thing we just did with all of our secondary dominant chords, right? I said, cool, well, we did C major 7 to A minor 7, right? And we said, cool, if I want to add in my secondary dominant, make that A minor 7 resolution feel a little bit more exciting, we go a 5th up from A minor, so A, B, C, D, E. E7 would be our secondary dominant, so I'd have C major, E7 to A minor. Or my 1 chord, 5 of 6, right? If we're analyzing it, I could call this 5-7 of 6 to 6. Now, what if I wanted to make this a full 2-5-1 going to A minor, right? I would just have to work backwards again. I'd say, okay, well, to find my 5 of A minor, I count up 5 notes, A, B, C, D, E. Great. Now, if I want to find the 2, I just count up 1 note, right? A, B. So I know, okay, cool. B is going to be my 2 chord. And then I think, am I doing a major or a minor chord resolution? Well, I'm resolving to a minor chord. So I'm going to do, my 2 chord will be B minor 7 flat 5, right? We always use minor 7 flat 5 when we're resolving to a minor chord. And then we have E7, our 5 chord, resolving to A minor. So now we have that really pronounced sound there. Let's try the same thing going to F, right? We said our 1 chord to our 4 chord, right? C major 7 to F major 7. We said, cool, we want to add in a secondary dominant, which I just think, okay, my target is F. 5 notes up from that is C, so we're going to have C7 to F, or you could think of this as 1, 5 of 4 to 4, right? Either way, either way, that's an appropriate way to think about it. And then we say, okay, cool, we want to make this resolution into a full 2-5-1. So I say, cool, I already know my 5 resolving to F is C, right? That's 5 notes up. So I think now, what is the 2 chord of F, which is my target? F, G. So I'm going to have a G something. Is it going to be minor 7 or minor 7 flat 5? I think, okay, I'm resolving to a major chord, so it's just going to be normal minor 7. So now I'd have G minor 7, C7, F major 7. Does that process make sense to everyone? Any questions on that? Everyone feeling good? Okay, sweetness. And something with this whole idea here is you're going to see a lot of, or rather you'll start to hear a lot of kind of popular songs within these kind of moves. You know, if I have a really simple chord progression, let's just put together what we just played, right? We played C major 7, A minor 7 to F, and then we'll say we'll just do G to C. So there's our chord progression. 1, 6, 4, 5. Or C major, A minor, F, G, right? I want to make this more exciting. Let's add, first step is adding a secondary dominant to every chord. So I could have C, E7 to A minor. Now going to F, I'm going to do C7 to F, right? I could do D dominant to G, back to C, right? And if we were analyzing that, I could have 1 major 7, 5 of 6, resolving to 6, 5 of 4, resolving to 4, 5 of 5, going to 5, bringing me back to 1. Does that make sense? Feel good? Anyone has any questions at any point too, feel free to stop me, please. Now, if I want to do that same chord progression, adding a 2-5-1 to every single dominant chord, or every single resolution, I would now have C, B minor 7 flat 5, E7, A minor. Right now I'm going to do 2-5-1 to F, G minor, C7, F. And we did 5 of 5 before, so I could do A minor, D7 to G7, but let's just negate that and just do a normal 2-5-1. Kind of boring, but just more traditional going back home. So this is where so many reharms come from. You know, you take a simple progression, right? And now I can add so much extra stuff to it. I could have right, that whole kind of R&B sound will start to come out a lot more prominently just using these 2-5-1s. We got a question. Eduardo, what's up?
Yeah, so how does it, like, the overlapping harmony, like if you were to solo over all these, like, this progression, how would the overlapping harmony react to all these, like, non-diatonic tritons?
Yeah, it'll sound incredible. And the cool thing is, which I'm glad you brought that up. What I wanted to allude to was, if somebody is just playing, if you just have the really basic chord progression, you just have C, A minor, F, G. When you go to solo over this progression, you could solo over it in your head as if you were adding in these extra chords. And even though it's a very basic sound, like, you know, just C, A minor, F, G, if you outline the changes adding in a 2-5-1, even if they're not being played, it's going to sound like incredible, right? And it will just really it kind of elevates the solo a little bit. So if I'm playing over, you know, C to A minor, and I'm going, right? No one was playing E7 when I went, but me adding that in is totally acceptable underneath it, because it's so quick and it's so fast, you're not even really going to notice it, right? If I'm just doing that. Right, that's the sound. I can't really play rhythm and lead at the same exact time, but same thing. I could put a full 2-5-1 lick if I'm just going C to F. I might go, shit. You know, it'll just elevate the sound melodically of what's kind of going on. And vice versa. If you have all these 2-5-1s, you can always reduce the harmony just to like the normal chord progression, right? And that's what 99% of jazz tunes are. It's like C, F, A minor, G, and then they just add in all these 2-5-1s and throw things in between, and it sounds like extra jazzy. Now, sorry, does that answer your question?
Yeah, for sure. Like a cool exercise would be to like just loop the progression, just like the simple progression, and try to outline those like specific like tritones and notes to
Exactly.
get spice, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Do you think we can get
so-
like, a little bit more into like the melodic approach to like this harmony?
Yeah.
Like time or like...
Yeah, 100%. I'm going to drop in the best way to start learning all of how to solo over 2-5-1s is first just like learn some normal 2-5-1 like licks in a way to get you started, and you can either transcribe them. I'll send you some here. Where did you go? Here we go. I'll send you some in the chat just so everyone has some. These are just good places to get started. You always want a couple major and minor 2-5-1 licks just so you have something to play in those places. But then basically what I want you to do is go through those 2-5-1s, think of your chord substitutions and all the arpeggios that go with them. Basically everything we did last week will apply to all of these chord progressions. And that's kind of how you start really soloing over all of these. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
Thanks.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Now, real quick, I just want to really quickly just go over how to analyze these. Here we go. Boom, we're back. Okay, cool. So if we just have, let's just take a normal 2-5-1 real quick, right? So we have, you know, C major 7, D minor 7, G7, and then we resolve back to C, right? So we'll just do this. And we have, if we're analyzing this, we would have 1 major 7, right? 2 minor 7, our normal 5 chord, 5 resolving to 1, right? That's all good and clean, makes sense. Now, whenever there's a 2-5-1 and we're analyzing, we always represent a 2-5-1 with a bracket like this, and then we put the arrow pointing to where it's resolving. That's just kind of how it's always done, like in music school, and when you're analyzing tunes, or if you're in the studio with like an orchestra, you'll see kind of stuff like this all the time. Now, let's see what happens if we just did a 2-5-1 to F, right? We're in the key of C. So let's just say we have C7, sorry. Let me put that 2 in there first. We'll have G minor 7, C7, and then resolving to F major 7. Again, we're in the key of C, and I'm going to say, okay, well, this is, I'm just thinking of F for a second, right? This is my 2 minor 7 and my 5-7 of F, but since we're in the key of C, we know F is our 4 chord, so I'm going to say this is 5-7 of 4. Same thing we did before, resolving to our 4 chord, 4 major 7. And again, we represent this with a bracket. And all this does right here is this just shows that we're resolving, this 2, sorry, it just shows that it's the relative 2 of our 5 of 4 chord, resolving to the 4. One last example, if we had, B minor 7 flat 5 to E7, resolving to A minor 7, right? We know this is our 6 minor 7 chord, and we can work backwards too. We could say, well, we know E7 is my 5 chord of the 6, right? Resolving down to the 6. This happens to be the related 2, but it's minor 7, flat 5. So that's really just how you'll always see people if you're analyzing tunes. This is really basically how it's going to be done. You always have a 2-5-1 with a bracket and then the arrow pointing to the resolution. Does that make sense? Feel good? And it's not, you know, like analyzing the stuff like this is really more like a theory nerd kind of thing to do, but it really will help you understand harmony, especially anytime I have to learn a new song. I'll print out 2 copies of it and I will just do this through on 1 copy just to see and really fully understand the song. So a really good thing to start looking at. Beautiful. So now we've kind of covered secondary dominants, 2-5-1s. I wanted to touch on one more thing, which is called tritone substitution. Sounds really scary, but is probably one of the most simple tools that we will use. I'll explain it first. If you have that sheet handy that I had put in the chat, you'll see there is a secondary dominant area on it. Or sorry, secondary dominant. There is a tritone substitution area on the bottom. And all we're doing is we are taking whatever dominant chord we have. So let's just say we're in the key of C again. We're working going 5-1, so G7 to C major. A tritone substitution, we're just going to build a different dominant 7 chord, a tritone away from the root of whatever dominant chord that we're working with. So in this case, we happen to be working with a G dominant 7 going to C, right? 5-1. So all I have to do is go a tritone away, and all a tritone is either a flat 5 or a sharp 4. So I could think of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then go down 1 note. Or you can always think of the tritone as just this shape. It's 1 fret up on the next string, and it sounds horrific. Right? It's a very dark sound, the tritone. So we said all we have to do is say, here's our normal dominant chord. We're going to go a tritone away and build a different dominant chord. So I've identified now a tritone away happens to be D flat. So now I'm going to play D flat 7, resolving to C major 7. So the theory behind why this works is, check us out. It's actually really genius. If I just take the core of any dominant chord, it's the root, the 3rd, and the 7th, right? That's going to give me all of the harmonic information that I need to know what kind of chord this is. So if I do that for G, I have G, B, and F, right? So my 3rd and my 7th, which are the defining notes of any dominant chord, the 3rd and the 7th, happen to be B is the 3rd and F is the 7th of G7, right? Here's those 2 notes. Now, the whole idea with tritone substitution, all we're doing is we're saying, okay, B is the 3rd of G and F is the 7th of G. Now, what happens if I flip that? What if I said, okay, well, what if B is the flat 7 and F is the 3rd of what chord, right? So all I have to do is think backwards. I think, okay, well, what's the major 3rd? If F is the major 3rd of what chord, it has to be a D flat chord, right? And then B just becomes the flat 7. So that's how we arrive at D flat. Now, you can visually represent this much easier if you just put down our G root and then our 3rd and our 7th. Now check us out. 3rd and 7th aren't moving. They're going to stay exactly the same. Now there's D flat as the bass note. G, D flat, G, D flat. Right? So we see how closely related they are. It might seem very random to go D flat 7 to C major 7, but all we're doing is we're flipping the 3rd and the 7th. And that's also on the bottom of that sheet represented there. Now, that's the in-depth explanation of it. If you want to find a tritone substitution, all you do literally is go 1 fret higher than your target chord. It's literally as simple as that. I need you to fully understand it. So when you're using it, you're not just like doing it willy-nilly, but targeting C major 7, want to do a tritone substitution, dominant chord 1 fret higher. That's it. It's all you got to do, right? Let's say we're going to F major 7. How do I find my tritone sub for F major 7? Go up 1 fret, play dominant chord. E7 to F major 7, right? And you can massage these voicings. When I'm practicing with these, sometimes I'll just use shell voicings, which is just the root 3rd and 7th, because it gives you a very literal sound, right? Now, let's see what happens if I'm going C to F major 7, right? We already did the secondary dominant. We did, right, which sounds great. Now let's see what happens if we do tritone substitution. I'd have beautiful sound, right? Right? Tritone to 1. And I could do both. I could do my normal dominant chord to my tritone substitution to my 1 chord. So I could technically go C, C7, F, sharp 7. Oh my gosh, I was saying E that whole time. I'm so sorry. It was F sharp, not E. My brain is just fried. So it's just another sound to work with. And yes, I would encourage you to use this while you're soloing too. If I just see G to C, over that G7, you're more than welcome to think D flat 7. It's just working a half step above. It's like kind of a little more simple to solo over, because you're just thinking, cool, here's my target. I'm gonna go up 1 fret and play a dominant chord, right? So really hip sound. Does that make sense as an idea? Just this tritone substitution? Are we feeling good? Any questions? Okay, sweet. So the last part of this tritone substitution shebang is we can also throw in our related 2 chord. So the easiest way to think of this is, cool, I have a 2-5-1 going to a chord. Let's say we're resolving to F. So I know if I want to do a 2-5-1, I would have 2, 5 of 4 to 4, right? I could do, instead of going 2, 5, 1, I could do 2 tritone sub to 1, right? So that would give me my 2 chord, G minor 7, tritone substitution, again, half step above our root, which is F sharp, and then resolving to our target chord. I could do that same thing here, right? 2 tritone sub 1. And it's cool because you're hearing the bass line now. We're getting, as opposed to normal 2-5-1, right? Or I could do both. I could do 2, 5, tritone 1. And those all sound just so many different ways to resolve, right? Oh, sorry. Or, right? And same thing, you can approach this from a soloing standpoint. You can do the same exact thing. So if you happen to decide to do 2 tritone substitution to 1, that's just called a chromatic 2-5-1, because we are literally moving chromatically down, right? And it's just such a great sound. And I'd encourage you to just experiment with this over, any chord progression, really. The chord progression I have in the module is just, C, A minor, F, G. Now I can mix in what we did before. We had all of our 2-5-1s before, right? Maybe I mix in a tritone substitution here and there. Maybe I go, sorry, I'll just do it to, right? Just did it going to the F. I could also do it going back to 1. there's no like right or wrong way to do this. It's kind of just thinking like how much you're consuming, like how it's like garlic, right? It's like, you know, just the one secondary dominant is like just like a little sprinkle of garlic powder. The full 2-5-1 is like a little garlic clove shaving, and then like the tritone substitution is like just housing an entire thing of garlic, right? Just like personal preference, how much garlic you want on your food, but with harmony. Does that all make sense? Is that feeling good? Sick. Okay, beautiful. So last thing, kind of just wrapping everything up, I wanted to kind of just introduce the two main ways that you can really process reharmonization and harmony in general. There's really two ways. You can either think of what we did last week, which was like, here's the chord. What other things can I do to this chord? What other chords exist in place of this? That was the whole approach we took last week. We can also approach harmony from just thinking in terms strictly of what the melody note is. And this is a really common practice for doing chord melodies, or, you know, anytime you hear someone playing a whole bunch of chords under something simple sounding. Like whatever it might be, right? A lot of times I'll let the melody lead me in where I'm going. So what I want you to do real quick, if you have that sheet from last week, the reharm chord sub explanation sheet with all my handwriting on it, I'll drop it in the chat too if anyone doesn't have it on hand. Let me just pop that in here. So what I mean by we can have the melody kind of controlling what is going on harmonically. Does everyone have that sheet open? Not yet, almost. Thumbs up if we got it. Yeah, we got it. Okay. So what I want you to do is just look at the bottom right hand box, the thing that says static harmony. It says pick a melody note and assign it to any interval. And then you can analyze every single possibility. So for example, I'm saying the melody note that I need to harmonize in this specific scenario is E. So I go, great. E, and this is the, you know, this is just a smidgen of the amount of possibilities, but I could say, cool, E is the root of what? E is the third of what? E is the fifth of what? E is the seventh, the flat 9, the sharp 9, the sharp 5, the flat 5, the 13th, right? You can go on forever and ever and ever, right? And there's kind of a way to boil this down. If you want to keep everything diatonic, you can do that too. I could say E is the major third of, or E is the third of what in the key of C, right? Let me just grab this whiteboard again. Just gotta erase it. So if I'm letting the melody lead me, right? Check this out. I can go like this. Share screen. So if I'm letting the melody lead, we got, oops, there we go. We have, let's say I'm saying, okay, cool. The melody note that we're harmonizing is an E, okay? That's our note, that's what we need to harmonize. We're in the key of C, so I go, cool. E could be the, let me just start making thirds around it, right? E could be the third of C, here's a C chord, so I could say, cool, it's the third of C. I could do A, C, E, G, that happens to now be the fifth of A minor 7, right? Could also be the root of E minor, or I could do E minor 7. Right, you see where I'm getting here? I could also do F, A, C, E. E could also be the major 7th of F major 7. Right, so this is a way of approaching this from a diatonic standpoint. I just have whatever note I have and I'm saying, cool, what diatonic chords can I create or harmonize from this one melody note? That's the way we would do it if we were thinking purely from a diatonic standpoint. What I have on the sheet here is something that I call static harmony, and it's basically just showing you, yes, like we know we could have our diatonic harmony listed out like this just by stacking thirds above or below our melody note that we're desiring to harmonize. Or I could just say, I'm not going to think diatonically at all. I'm going to say, let me explore every possibility, right? E could be the root of E major, E minor, E major 7, E minor 9, E minor 7 flat 5, E diminished. It could be the 9th of D add 9, D major 9, D minor 9, D minor major 9. It could be the sharp 9 of D flat 7, sharp 9. It could be the flat 9 of E flat 7, the major 3rd of C, minor 3rd of C sharp minor. Could be the sus 4, the 11th of B sus, or B minor 11, flat 5 of B minor, B flat minor 7 flat 5, 5th of A minor, A major 7, A minor 7, A dominant 7, sharp 5 of A flat augmented, right? Like, I mean, you could literally just keep going the entire day until you're blue in the face, but this is a really great exercise, and a lot of my favorite players will use this as a tool. And at the end of the day, like, you can kind of end up analyzing some of this when you mix it into a entire functional chord progression. But what I want to put in your head is that whenever you have a functional chord progression, which is what we've just worked with, right? We can analyze it. We can go, cool, this is 2, 5 of 4 going to 4. Here's a tritone substitution resolving down a half step. Here is my 6th chord, and there's a minor 2, 5, 1 going to it, right? That's all functional harmony because everything has a very intentional purpose or function. Static harmony is what we would call non-functional harmony, in the sense that you can't always quite analyze. There's not one right answer for analyzing it. It's very much up to debate. When I do a chord melody or something and have different players analyze my chords, people will say, oh, well, I heard that as a 5 of 4. Someone else will say, I heard this as a 1 dominant 7, or I heard this as a flat 6 major 7. Like, the point being, static harmony, there's no one right answer for how to analyze it. It's very much up to the listener to decide how they're hearing that chord function. And it's just a beautiful way to kind of start approaching harmony in general, because there's so many endless options to work with. Any questions on that? That's probably the least, the static harmony is probably the least like universally used, like, and especially like in modern pop and stuff. Like, you're not going to hear a lot of this on the radio per se, but it's a really, really hip sound, and a lot of musicians are using it. So it's really fun to check out. Yeah, any questions on pretty much any of that stuff that we've talked about today? Secondary dominants, 2-5-1s, tritone subs. Yeah, what's going on? I think you're still muted there. There we go.
So when it comes to arpeggios, using the subdominants and all that, is it all basically fair game there too, where I can use the arpeggios of the secondary dominant? I mean, the secondary dominant, can I use those arpeggios in those?
100%. You can use those, yeah, for like over a 2-5-1. You can use the same arpeggios, whether or not that 2-5-1 is being played, or that tritone substitution is being played. Maybe you're just literally playing C to F. That's all that's written on the page. That's all the band is playing. I might be sitting there when I'm soloing thinking G minor 7 to C dominant 7 to F. I might be thinking that full 2-5-1, or I might think tritone substitution. Oh, sorry, right? I could think of absolutely any arpeggios that I want, which is the beauty behind that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And even if it's like a normal 2-5-1, you could always play the 2-chord tritone substitution, even though the band is playing the normal dominant chord. Like, all of this stuff is so interchangeable. It's like, yeah, I want you all to feel like empowered and like free with this kind of stuff, because I know when I started it, I was like, I need to follow these very strict rules and it all needs to make sense. But so much of like the really pretty, beautiful harmony is just people playing different ideas like on top of each other. Like, yeah, the band's playing a G7, but I'm playing a D flat 7, and you get this crazy chord at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, it's all absolutely all fair play, And everything that we covered chord wise, you can absolutely use from a soloing standpoint using your arpeggios and stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy. And yeah, so I wanted to just talk real quick. The kind of wanted to have like a final project, so that you all can have something that you've like accomplished through, using all these ideas. So basically, the guidelines that I have on the website, there should be like a final project module kind of thing. Is I'm pretty much saying to write an A section where you just have an 8-bar chord progression, and within that 8-bar chord progression, you have at least one secondary dominant in 1, 2, 5, 1. You can have as many or as few chords as you want. You could just have the bare minimum. This isn't like a put as much as you can, many different chords, many reharms as you want. And then, so we have that first A section, just 8 bars, one secondary dominant, 1, 2, 5, 1. Have a B section, which can really just be the same exact chord progression, but I want you to have a couple reharms, and I want you to have at least 4 different reharmonizations. So, you can think of like the chord progression we did last week. We had all those chords. I had you put a couple options above each chord to play through differently every single time. I'll have you do that same idea for the B section. So 16 bars in total. If you want to do 24 bar form, you want to do your A section is 12 bars, your B section is 12 bars, it's absolutely fine. Again, these are just basic guidelines. And then if you are feeling up to it and you want to share, which I think we all should, all the time, and it's just a good kind of practice and like performance too, like getting something together, being held accountable and sharing it, has always been super beneficial for me. So if you have the time and you want to record yourself playing it, your face doesn't have to be in it. It can literally just be like, just the guitar or something. Upload it on like a unlisted or a private YouTube link, and then drop the link into the comment section on the final project module, so we can all kind of see what we all came up with and kind of talk about it and see if we have any similarities, if we have any crazy epiphanies and we broke the harmonic system doing our project. You never know, anything's possible. So that's kind of the idea behind the final project. There's no like real quote unquote like due date. Like you don't have to do it before the office hours on Thursday. If you do, it'd be great because then I can give you feedback on it. That's kind of the main encouraging part for doing a video of yourself playing it. So if you do feel inclined to, get the video done by Thursday, and we can talk about it at the office hours on Thursday. And if you don't get it done by Thursday, it's totally fine. Still share it with the class anytime. Everyone will always be in this this like module, this area on the website rather. So question. I see Morgan.
So one of the things I was struggling with the previous week, so the chord substitution, a lot of those chords are foreign to me. Is there like a resource that you have that has like the some shapes of those chords, or is it? I'm thinking it's better to learn how to build the chord, but like it makes my head want to explode too.
No, 100%. Yeah, I totally get it. Let me drop in. Where are we? Yeah, this pretty much has, let's see. Well, this will have a good amount of those chords. I'm just dropping this into the chat, so anyone else can grab it if you'd like. Just make sure you save it to your desktop. And then, if there's like any specific chord that you're after that you can't find, just shoot me a message in the final project module, and I'll just like post a couple voicings that you could use for it. And if anyone's like interested in expanding more on this stuff, there's a book called, let me find it. I'll drop there's a book by Ted Green called Chord Chemistry. I think it's like the greatest book greatest guitar book ever written. I would go as far as that to say that. And basically, oh my gosh, where did it go? Oh, it's in my backpack actually. Sorry, but it's basically just in like everything that we've covered in this class. It's basically an entire book, and there will be like 60 pages of 5,000 different voicings for every single kind of chord. It's like absolutely insane, and everybody should own a copy of this book. It's called Chord Chemistry. Chord Chemistry by Ted Green.
Ray's got it. Ray's got it in his
Oh yeah, that's the one, baby. Nothing like it. He has he has a bunch of other books too. Like the single note soloing one, like he has another one on harmony. Absolutely incredible books.
I just put it in the chat for everyone.
Oh, beautiful. Okay. Oh,
The file I just uploaded is Chord Chemistry.
I see. Okay. Oh, you got the actual. Damn, that's amazing.
Yeah, I got the. Yeah, it's on Scribd, so all you can just do is just take it.
Oh, incorrect.
But there it is for everyone, so you guys.
Thank you
can
so
grab
much, man. I'm actually gonna take that myself.
it.
I only have the digital copy.
Of course.
Thank you very much. Amazing. I realized too, I was sending messages and I think I was DMing them by accident to Christian. So sorry to Christian. I think you were the only one getting all my DMs when I was putting this in. Beautiful. Oh yeah, you got that's the vintage copy. It's the same one that I have. Funniest cover is just Ted Green with the biggest beard ever.